The Voynich Manuscript, a relic shrouded in 6 centuries of impenetrable silence, its pages, a maddening tapestry of alien botany, cryptic zodiac wheels, and an indecipherable script flowing like a river of secrets, have mocked the finest cryptographers, linguists, and AI from Bletchley Park to Silicon Valley. Is it an elaborate hoax, a lost pharmacopoeia, or something far more unsettling? Enter Dr. Eleanor Vance, 63, a luminary in historical linguistics now gathering dust in forced early retirement. Her brilliance sidelined by institutional politics and a corrosive cynicism, born of academic battles lost, haunting the hallowed quiet of Yale's Voynich Library, the manuscript's fortress home. Eleanor isn't seeking prophecy. She's seeking solace among the ghosts of language past. But the Voynich, that silent sphinx, has other plans. It's not a sudden Rosetta Stone moment, no blinding flash of translation. Instead, it's a creeping, chilling dread born of patterns ignored by those seeking literal meaning. Her weary eyes, trained by decades to see the weave of communication, begin to trace connections others dismissed as pareidolia. The bizarre, twisted plants, not mere fantasy, but stark, stylized harbingers, markers of ecosystem collapse depicting blight, sterility, and symbiotic ruptures echoing today's accelerating climate crisis. Where July 2023 shattered global heat records and Antarctic sea ice hit unprecedented lows. The intricate astrological charts, not personal horoscopes, but a grim celestial timeline, pinpointing a terrifying convergence in the skies, aligning ominously with late 2026. And those endlessly debated text fragments, not recipes, but warnings, whispered through centuries. Hesiod's breath sickness, chillingly resonant in a post-COVID world, where zoonotic spillover events are monitored with increasing alarm. Missile Hill-grade heat, mirroring projections of cascading climate tipping points, Twameden sundering, reflecting the fragmenting geopolitical landscape, where escalating tensions over AI dominance, critical mineral shortages, vital for the green transition in tech, and renewed great power rivalries threaten flashpoints. This is no academic curiosity. It's a Polycrisis blueprint, buried in Vellum. Eleanor's methodology, holistic pattern recognition over rigid translation, becomes her cross. Her meticulously argued paper, predicting a catastrophic cascade beginning late 2026, is met not with awe, but derision. The establishment, clinging to traditional philology and skeptical of doomsaying, especially from a sidelined scholar, brands it elegant pareidolia, apophenia, the desperate fantasy of a faded mind. The weight of knowing crushes her fragile cynicism, replaced by a terrifying responsibility. She is utterly alone until Ben Carter, 58, the Vonych's world-weary head archivist, slides a dusty box across his desk. Beneath his pragmatic exterior lies a deep commitment to truth, however inconvenient, forged in decades of safeguarding history's uncomfortable chapters. He knows the manuscript's power, the shadows it attracts. He possesses something invaluable, deep institutional memory and a network of off-grid contacts. Climatologists operating beyond IPCC bureaucracy, virologists tracking emergent threats in forgotten jungles, conflict analysts mapping the world's fracture lines. And then there's Aisha Khan, 24, a Gen Z data visualization prodigy Ben discreetly recruits. Where Eleanor sees historical patterns, Aisha sees real-time data screaming the same warnings. She feeds modern climate models showing Arctic amplification accelerating faster than predicted, pandemic early warning systems tracking novel pathogens, with concerning mutation rates and geopolitical risk AI into Eleanor's historical framework. The correlations aren't just eerie, they're statistically horrifying. Late 2026 isn't just a date, it's an event horizon, operating from library basements and encrypted channels. This unlikely trinity, the disillusioned sage, the pragmatic keeper, the digital native, becomes humanity's secret early warning system. Using Ben's clandestine network, they bypass skeptical gatekeepers, whispering their findings directly to the few experts whose own cutting-edge models are flashing. Red, a climatologist in Norway seeing methane plumes where the Voynich showed rotten air. An epidemiologist in Singapore sequencing a back coronavirus strain with unnerving parallels to the breath sickness glyphs. A geopolitical strategist warning of AI-driven misinformation triggering the sundering in multiple hotspots simultaneously. But secrets bleed, a fragment leaks, then the dam breaks, the media, hungry for apocalypse, erupts. Voynich Doomsday Scroll, 2026, the biblical beekeeper's warning, the frenzy is instant. Global, toxic, conspiracy theorists seize it, preppers stockpile, markets shudder. Worse, powerful interests emerge from the shadows, not to help, but to exploit. Tech oligarchs see an opportunity to cement control through crisis tech. Shadowy financial players position themselves to profit from the predicted chaos. Authoritarian regimes see a chance to justify preemptive crackdowns under the guise of stability. Some actively work to suppress the information, fearing panic or wanting the edge for themselves. Ben's contacts go dark, Aisha's systems face sophisticated cyber attacks. Eleanor receives veiled threats disguised as academic critique. The race shifts. Preventing the 2026 convergence may be impossible. The Voynich seem to depict an inevitable climax, a historical echo. The true battle is for preparation and integrity. Can they expose those seeking to weaponize the prophecy for power and profit? Can they get actionable intelligence, specific vulnerabilities, potential mitigation strategies hinted at in the manuscript's chaotic beauty? To the right hands before the world fractures, the climax isn't a bomb diffused, but a network ignited. As the first undeniable tremors of the predicted crisis ripple through the world in late 2026, perhaps a simultaneous crop failure across breadbaskets amplified by climate shifts, a zoonotic outbreak in a megacity, a cascading cyber attack, triggering regional conflict, we find Eleanor, Ben, and Aisha not in a triumphant spotlight, but in a dimly lit safe house, monitoring global feeds. Their faces are etched with exhaustion and sorrow for what's unfolding, but also a fierce, hard-won resilience. They haven't stopped the storm, but they've quietly activated a global web of prepared minds, ethical actors, and fortified communities, a fragile human shield, woven in the shadow of a medieval manuscript's terrifyingly prescient scream. The Voynich's final, unspoken glyph, not an end, but a beginning, entrance. The Voynich Manuscript, 6 centuries of cryptic botany and inscrutable script, a labyrinth guarding secrets that have defied empires of intellect. Was it merely an elaborate Renaissance hoax, a herbalist's coded dream, or something far darker? A warning cast across time. For Arthur Henderson, a brilliant, reclusive amateur cryptographer in the quiet Vermont town of Elmsworth, it became an obsession that consumed decades and marked him, to most, as the local crank. His sudden death leaves a void filled only by dusty boxes bequeathed to his nephew, Mark Henderson, 50. Mark, a high school history teacher already adrift in the wake of a painful divorce, returns to Elmsworth burdened by grief and the unsettling weight of his uncle's legacy. Soaring through Arthur's cluttered study, Mark unearths not eccentric ramblings, but a terrifyingly meticulous life work. Arthur's controversial decoding of the Voynich. Forget star charts or alchemy, Arthur saw apocalypse in the herbal and balneological pages. He interpreted the manuscript's grotesque, impossible flora not as fantasy, but as stark, symbolic diagnostics, indicators of ecological unraveling, twisted roots signaling, collapsing soil microbiomes crucial to agriculture, a crisis highlighted in recent UN FAO reports, predicting significant yield drops by 2030, blighted leaves, hinting at novel pathogens leaping the species barrier, echoing the WHO's warnings about disease X, and rising zoonotic spillover events tracked globally. The bathing scenes, rituals enacted around strange pools. Arthur saw not hygiene, but societal disintegration, depictions of forced displacement, mass migration. The flood not of water, but desperate humanity. His chilling prediction wasn't a single doomsday, but a sequence, fracture, fever, flood, a cascade beginning subtly, tied not to dates, but observable thresholds. Specific ocean current shifts like the worrying fluctuations observed in the AMOC, potentially impacting European weather patterns. Unprecedented wildlife die-offs like the 2023 mass seabird deaths linked to marine heat waves, leading inevitably to societal breakdown and waves of climate refugees. Arthur's notes chart his own descent, initial exhilaration at the puzzle solved, hardening into grim certainty, then frantic, futile attempts to warn a world that wouldn't listen. Mark, steeped in historical cause and effect, is initially skeptical, dismissing it as the tragic culmination of his uncle's isolation. But then the world begins to echo. News alerts blare, unprecedented avian flu strain jumps to mammals, including dairy cattle, a chilling resonance. With Arthur's fever-phased notes on zoonotic threats, Reports detail record shattering marine heat wave devastates Mediterranean fisheries, aligning with his predictions of oceanic collapse triggering food chain failure. Headlines scream political polarization reaches historic highs. Trust in institutions plummets, the very fracture Arthur foresaw as the prelude. The abstract dread in his uncle's notebooks bleeds into Mark's reality. Sharing his terrifying inheritance with his ex-wife, Sarah, 45, Elmsworth's pragmatic town doctor, sparks conflict. She fears Mark is succumbing to grief-induced delusion, projecting global anxieties onto local life, yet the Voynich's shadow deepens. In her clinic, Sarah starts seeing anomalies, elderly patients presenting with baffling respiratory symptoms. Unlike typical viruses, farmers reporting livestock with unexplained neurological issues, whispers of a potential emerging fever, subtle signs easily missed without Arthur's dire framework. Data meets dread. Sarah's medical pragmatism collides with Mark's historical unease, forging a fragile, necessary alliance. Arthur's prophecy becomes their burden. Knowing a global storm is brewing, Mark realizes Elmsworth, his home, is his only battlefield. He won't convince presidents or generals. His fight is for Main Street, for the local grocery store, the high school gym, his neighbors. He must transform theoretical fracture, fever, flood into actionable, local resilience. Armed with his uncle's meticulous, if terrifying, research, Mark steps into the town council chamber, not as a prophet of doom, but as a history teacher pleading for preparation. He proposes strengthening the local food co-op seed banks and expanding community gardens using Arthur's notes on resilient, forgotten crops, a tangible buffer against predicted flood-induced supply chain failures. He urges Sarah to quietly update the town's emergency medical protocols, stockpile critical antibiotics, and establish isolation protocols based on Arthur's fever sequences. Preparation, not panic. He suggests forming a refugee support network, anticipating the human tide Arthur called the flood, drawing on lessons from communities hosting Ukrainian or Syrian refugees. The reaction is Elmsworth in microcosm. Mayor Jenkins, 68, dismisses it as Arthur's nonsense, fearing economic damage from scaremongering. Doris Finch, 72, head of the Garden Club, sees sense in local food security. Randy Briggs, 40, owner of the hardware store, smells opportunity and starts quietly stockpiling supplies for profiteering. Young families oscillate between fear and skepticism. Mark faces open ridicule at town meetings. Voynich voodoo, accusations of fear-mongering, and the opportunistic rise of local preppers aiming to exploit the anxiety. The tension isn't just global. It's the strained Thanksgiving dinner where Mark tries to explain his mission to his skeptical teenage children, the wary glances at the grocery store, the painful rift with old friends who think he's lost his mind. Yet, as the predicted sequences subtly accelerate globally, reports of major shipping companies rerouting due to critical water level drops in key canals. Fracture, new study confirms accelerating permafrost thaw releasing ancient pathogens. Fever, UNHCR warns climate displacement could exceed 1 billion by 2050. Flood, small cracks appear in Elmsworth's skepticism. A freak microburst flood, worsened by outdated town drainage. A local flood precursor. Test Sarah's updated medical response protocols. Doris Finch's expanded seed library suddenly has a waiting list. The climax isn't a cataclysm hitting Elmsworth, but the slow, hard-won forging of community bonds before the global storm peaks. It's Mark, Sarah, Doris, and even a reluctantly pragmatic Mayor Jenkins, working through a harsh Vermont winter to convert the old community center into a potential emergency shelter and resilience hub, stockpiling not just beans and bandages, but knowledge and trust. When the first tangible waves of the predicted global flood finally lap at Elmsworth's edges, perhaps a busload of displaced families, from a coastal city ravaged by superstorms, seeking refuge inland, the town isn't caught helpless. They are scared, yes, but prepared. They have a plan, thanks to a disgraced uncle's obsession and a divorced history teacher who chose to believe in legacy and locality. The Voynich Manuscript's final, unspoken message, decoded through Arthur's sacrifice and Mark's quiet leadership, isn't despair, but a defiant whisper. Sanctuary? It's found not in grand schemes, but in the soil of community gardens, the stocked shelves of the co-op, the practiced hands of neighbors trained by Sarah, and the enduring, hard-earned trust binding a small town together against the gathering Fracture, fever, and flood, the true prophecy was always about the power of home. Asterisk the Voynich Manuscript, an artifact of such enduring, impenetrable mystery that it mocks the digital age. Is it a lost language, an alchemist's folly, or, as a shadow whispered into the ear of Sir James Althorpe, 65, recently retired from a lifetime navigating the world's most treacherous diplomatic minefields, something far more dangerous, an ancient autopsy of collapse? His discreet summons arrives not to a government office, but to a Zurich bunker beneath a private bank, smelling of old money, stale cigar smoke, and chilling ambition. The consortium materializes, not caricature villains, but the razor-sharp elite of a fractured world, a former CIA director whose eyes hold classified horrors, a Russian oligarch turned data-baron controlling critical mineral supply chains, a Singaporean financier whose algorithms move global capital, and Dr. Lena Petrov, 52, a Ukrainian-born computational linguist radiating fierce, brittle intelligence. Their claim: they haven't merely translated the Voynich. They've cracked its predictive code using quantum computing, an advanced AI trained on petabytes of historical collapse data mirroring our own, accelerating climate feedback, loops, methane plumes erupting from thawing Arctic permafrost, monitored by ESA satellites, hypervirulent pathogen evolution, Nipah case spikes in Asia, echoing Voynich fever star clusters, and AI-driven social fragmentation sundering, glyphs correlating with deepfake election interference, and rising conflict risk indices tracked by the ICRC. The manuscript, they assert, isn't prophecy, it's a Polycrisis algorithm. Its bizarre botanical pages, calibrated indicators of ecological tipping points, its astrological wheels, probabilistic timelines. Crucially, key folios depict stark decision points, branching paths where past societies chose ruin or ruthless, managed descent. The consortium's AI-fed real-time data streams projects an 87.3% probability of catastrophic, cascading system failure converging in late 2026, a point of no return. Democracy, they argue, with cold logic James finds terrifyingly persuasive, is terminally slow. The IPCC reports gather dust, pandemic treaties stall. Safety summits like Bletchley 2020 for yield platitudes, not binding controls. Their solution? Project Delphi, a preemptive, globally synchronized stabilization protocol. Lena presents the chilling specifics with clinical detachment. Preemptive seizure of strategic grain reserves and rare earth deposits to prevent resource wars. Curated information harmonization, permanent blackouts on the stabilizing truths. Enforced population control in high-risk zones via covertly administered pharmaceuticals. A soft co-masked as vaccination programs. Its triage on a planetary scale. Sir James, the oligarch states, swirling ice-cold vodka. The Voynich shows the cost of inaction. We offer the least worst path, James. Haunted by past compromises that save thousands, but sacrifice principles. Is trapped. The science feels irrefutable. Lena's models cross-referencing Voynich patterns with current NATO, climate threat assessments, and WHO pandemic forecasts are devastating. The consortium's network is terrifyingly capable. Their logic, a seductive poison. Is this monstrous pragmatism the only bulwark against utter ruin? The thriller descent begins. James, leveraging his unparalleled contacts, embarks on a clandestine verification odyssey in a Geneva safehouse. A climatologist paled by the consortium's Arctic amplification models confirms their projections exceed worst-case IPCC scenarios. In a Singapore data haven, an AI ethicist confirms the terrifying plausibility of their information control systems, citing recent advances in neural network manipulation. Each confirmation tightens the ethical vice. Simultaneously, Lena Petrov seeks him out, her steel facade cracking. The models are correct, Sir James. She whispers over encrypted line, voice raw. But Delphi, it becomes a machine for atrocity. They talk of necessary sacrifices as if they're deleting spreadsheet cells. She becomes his fragile, volatile ally within the beast. Opposing them is James's own daughter, Miranda, 42, an investigative journalist for a global news consortium, sensing her father's sudden, oppressive secrecy and global elite movements aligning strangely, a Bilderberg meeting coinciding with key Delphi planning sessions. She starts digging, unaware she's tracking her own father into the heart of an existential conspiracy. James navigates this razor's edge, consortium meetings in Dubai penthouses, where resource reallocation means starving millions into submission. Tense exchanges with Lena smuggling fragmented Delphi sub-protocols. Desperate calls to old allies in government, only to find them compromised, powerless, or silently aligned with the consortium's grim calculus the world outside provides. Horrifying validation, UN warns famine imminent in 4 regions as global grain reserves plunge. Delphi's justification for seizure. Meta announces civic integrity overlay AI to curb harmful narratives ahead of 2024 elections. A chilling echo of their information control. Breakthrough study confirms CRISPR-based gene drives could enable species-specific population control, the ghastly science behind their soft coal. The Voynich's decision point looms, not on parchment, but on James Althorpe's conscience. The climax isn't a gunfight, but a choice in silence. Late 2025. Project Delphi's activation sequence is imminent. James possesses damning evidence. Lena's stolen files, consortium meeting logs, the Voynich correlation models. He stands at the precipice. Join them. Use his influence to moderate Delphi's brutality. Becoming complicit in a monstrous system that might save a remnant of civilization. Become the humane face of atrocity. Leak selectively. Trust a fractured, potentially infiltrated international body, or a specific world leader to act responsibly with the truth. Risk triggering the very panic Delphi seeks to preempt. Or worse, handing power to a different set of tyrants. Burn it all. Send everything to Miranda and trusted global media, igniting global chaos, mass panic, and guaranteeing the worst-case collapse the Voynich depicts. Sacrifice order for the slim chance humanity might rally without becoming monsters. As the first hours of 2026 bleed across time zones, James stares at his encrypted laptop screen. 1 email address, Miranda's. 1 file, the Delphi Annihilation dossier. He hears Lena's desperate plea, don't let them make us the architects of hell. He sees the consortium's cold certainty, it's the only rational calculus. He feels the Voynich's 600-year-old scream echoing through climate data streams. At pandemic alerts, his finger hovers over the send key. The cost of action, unimaginable. The cost of inaction, extinction. The Voynich Manuscript offered no easy answers. Only the terrible math of survival. Sir James Althorpe, retired diplomat, must now solve the ultimate equation. What is the price of a future? The clock ticks. He chooses. The world holds its breath.